Thank you for joining me for another episode of Wake and Empower TV. I'm your host, Ethan Fox. Today I'm joined by Dr. Ann Cooper, and we're discussing a topic that's a little bit different from our usual content on this show. What I'm noticing is there are a lot of amazing things happening in the world and a lot of different new breakthroughs coming from various fields of technology, the monetary system, and health and longevity. As we're heading into this really accelerated time of growth and innovation and expansion of consciousness on the planet, there are many things that are becoming available to us to help us to live more vibrant, healthy, and abundant lives. So from time to time, we're going to have guests on the show that are not necessarily of a more spiritually based content, but also in these other areas. So on that topic, we are discussing the topic of deuterium in our environment and how to deplete deuterium, which may be, so the show is a little bit more sciencey and a little bit more based on biology and health than the usual content we have. But I'm sure you'll find it very valuable and to help you to make changes in your life to live a longer, more healthy life. Before we get into that, I want to mention we have our next Awaken Apart Expo coming up this August in Detroit, Michigan at the Doubletree Hilton. That'll be 3 days of lots of interesting topics from health to spirituality to consciousness, all kinds of amazing presenters who are doing breakthrough work in a variety of different fields, including a number of people who are in the Light Worker program that we help to get out there, who are doing brand new things that in modalities that are quite extraordinary in their own unique ways. We also have our Weekend in Wizardry program, which is our kids' 3-day camp that's coming up this June in 2019 as well, which will be taking place on a farm with lots of animals. And we have different classes like animal communication and telekinesis and channeling and crystals and quite a variety of things that I'm sure they'll find quite interesting and educational as well. We have our Conscious Youth program, which is every 2 weeks. And that's a free online program for kids that they can join and meet other kids around the world who are gifted in different areas or interested in developing an understanding or talents in these different fields. So we have lots of expert teachers similar to what we have at our expo, but brought down to a level that children can understand and benefit from. So that you can sign your kids up at consciousyouth.org. And then the expo is at wakeandimpartexpo.com, and our Weekend in Wizardry 3-day camp is aweekendinwizardry.com. So without any further delay, here's Dr. Ann Cooper. Hello, Dr. Cooper. Welcome to the show, and it's a pleasure for me to have you on the show and to talk about this very interesting subject area that you're an expert in. So welcome to the show, and where are you calling from today?
Thanks, Ethan. It's really a pleasure for me to be able to connect with more people and share this information with more of the world. I am in our office at the Center for Deuterium Depletion in Los Angeles, close to Santa Monica.
Great. And I'd like to start by learning a little bit about you and your background. I know you're originally from Australia and so on, and you do have a lot of background in various more holistic and Chinese herbalism and things of that nature. So can you talk a bit about your journey to this point?
Yeah, grew up in Australia. I think one of the best things in my life is I was raised by very shy, quiet parents, but their whole goal in life was to raise children that were kind, as they were very kind themselves. And all of my siblings are the same way. And just look at my mum, how well they take care of her just by observation rather than her having to even ask for anything. I really feel very fortunate to have that built in. And I know it's helped me along the way in many ways by just being able to have people feel safe. So I did attend the French skincare clinic in Sydney, Australia. And pretty much a few months after that, it just happened that I had the opportunity to come to Los Angeles, which I jumped on. Of course, as an Aussie, all we want to do is see the planet and enjoy the world. So I came to Los Angeles, and it was in the early 80s. And at that time, as we call it beauty therapist in Australia, we call it aesthetician here or facialist. I was hired very quickly because there wasn't a lot of European skincare in America at the time. I was hired up on, Sunset Plaza, Beverly Hills, Westwood area, and immediately went to work. And it was really fantastic. In those days, I mean, most of the people that were having those kind of treatments were in the movie business. So, I did tend to meet a lot of people in that business, which was very interesting. And I saw a lot of famous faces. But early on, and just, lovely people in general, being in a small 10 by 12 room, individual for more time than they actually spend with a lot of other people, you really do connect and you start to be very acquainted with other people's energy. And I just felt like I became too close to a lot of people, even though they were my clients. I still have connections with people that I met when I was the oldest girl in the family, and frankly, you get a lot of I know I did, like self-esteem from taking care of the others. So that's just how I developed, I guess, being kind of a caretaker, which good or bad, maybe good parts to that and bad parts to that. But just working closely with those people also, I know that kind of fulfilled that in me. Although early on, I did realize that skincare, I wanted to do more. I had a brain and I wanted to do more really than just be working superficially and topically, even though just, the whole massage thing, it's kind of a, meditation aspect to it. And both of us are in a very calming, relaxed environment. But I just realized that your skin is really a reflection of what's going on inside. And no matter what I do topically, I think it was really important to look at what was going inside. I guess I would say in my own family, I was kind of the one that was more leaning towards like the health nut in the family. It was just a natural instinct for me to want to eat green more. I don't know why. And in the 80s, it wasn't really around that much. A lot of the health food stores that are here now, and just the whole mindset that people are much more aware now of what they eat. It just wasn't around then. So I know I did start to speak to my clients about other things that they could do and what they're eating and things like that with the limited amount of knowledge that I had. But I ended up having a client who was a chiropractor, and we made a nice connection, of course, and became friends and are still friends. And I had actually had pretty severe headaches my whole life, my whole childhood, and my parents sent me to an eye doctor. But one of those things I kind of put up with. But once I got treated by a chiropractor, they just opened up that occipital nerve in the back. Not really even a headache, it's a neuralgia, it's a nerve pain. It's awful. Chiropractic fixed that. I thought, wow, I want to be able to do that. That just seems like a great thing to be able to do, get people quickly out of pain. And but then I realized that chiropractors also study a lot about nutrition. And it was my goal, I think, what am I going to do next? So I was really thinking, how can I help people more from the inside out? So that's why I chose chiropractic for myself, to be able to still help people in a further way, but also it was going to be combining what I was kind of thinking about along the way, chiropractic and nutrition. So, and luckily all along the way, I had all these lovely people following me and supporting me while I was in school. So I was really able to support myself while I was studying full time. And eventually I ended up getting acupuncture. I knew about acupuncture, but I hadn't experienced it. And I thought, wow, at that time I was working very hard and was running myself down, and acupuncture was just a sensation that I got from it. But I just loved, as I learned about it, the web, because the body is very, convoluted and there's a lot of things going on. And I just love the connections that you can make in all sorts of ways, via chemistry, via energy, via all sorts of organ systems and meridians that you learn about in Chinese medicine. I just loved all the connections. And the fact that it was really about nature. Chinese medicine is about really looking at your surroundings, seasons, and use the foods and the lifestyles that are appropriate to those. And also your thought processes. I was really kind of impressed with actually the young women that I was in school with, because I was quite a bit older than them. I look back, I thought, wow, wish I'd have had this exposure to this thought process when I was their age. And those girls really all made nice connections with each other. I can see they all really do still have lovely friendships. Chiropractic school is fabulous, but it's more testosterone, it's more masculine. It's a little bit there's definitely some spiritual chiropractors out there, and with a lot of awareness. But at the time, it's, while you're in school, I haven't really been exposed to even touching people or being around other people's energy. I just felt a big difference when I went to acupuncture school between the two. So one is yin and one is more yang. But, so that I had combined. I was really enjoying myself combining all of these things together. I would say that's what my brain likes to do. I tend to like to be able to do, think about different things rather than, do the one thing repeatedly. So I was really enjoying my work. I think a lot of my patients enjoyed the benefit of particularly living in Los Angeles, of coming and get a lot of things done at once rather than having to sit mostly in traffic for that treatment. And they could really come and relax and get a combination of therapies that run the gamut. Yes, we're known for pain, but a lot of it really is for just resetting your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. Everybody's overloaded. And I would, be in a room, I could feel it, I would treat them. And once I could come back in, you just feel the whole energy of that room has changed. And I would say I got a lot of self-esteem or self-worth from just being the one that was able to do that for this person. It was a really nice feeling, and they would just float out, and it was just happy. It's a happy place, right? So I've been doing that for quite some time, incorporating nutrition, chiropractic. Even my old skincare clients have still followed me around. Pretty much I have a lot of social. It's like a social session. And in those times, they're people I've known for a long time, and it's really like a fun call, a fun visit. But I was really very fortunate. Just over 3 years ago, I think, where I was introduced to Dr. Q, and because he was you'll learn more about Dr. Q, but he's been a cancer researcher, an immunologist his entire career. He had really, throughout all that he had learned, realized there needs to be more than what they were aware of in the Western medicine world. We really looked into the ketogenic diet and nutrition. So we were introduced by somebody who appreciated that we were both working with nutrition. We met, and then not too long after that, he a large metabolic conference that he held every year, and he invited Dr. Laszlo Boris, one of our co-founders here, and he had not met him, but he knew about him. He'd read his papers. He's a biochemist, and he did approach Dr. Q and explain to him really why the ketogenic diet works so well, and it made sense. He listened and paid attention, and it actually made sense. And it's a really big, eye-opening awareness about physiology, what's really going on in there. And we discussed all that, and I learned from them a lot. I've learned so much from these scientists. But it did make sense to me on a cellular level. You study cell physiology, study the mitochondria, and it's kind of simple. Simple made sense to me. Then I did see some scans from a medical conference that Dr. Boris was speaking at, and I saw pre- and post scans of some very serious cases that were given 2 weeks that I was looking at 20 years later. So that was extremely impressive. And along the way, doing all of this with this, Aussie energy, and kept on going, and I pushed myself, and with all of the studying, and a lot of practitioners may do this. We really enjoy taking care of others, and sometimes we are better at that than really listening to ourselves. So it did catch up with me, and I did not like it. I did not enjoy it at all, because I was used to being high energy, and it can really slow you down, and it's frustrating to be yourself but not be yourself. I looked into all sorts of areas for improvement, not as much as I would have, because I really understand now people low in energy often can't take the action they normally would if they had that energy. So it can be a difficult process for people to break through and move on from. But I did a lot of my own functional medicine, Chinese herbs, and acupuncture and meridian therapies, and I really was like, is this going to change? Or, how long is this going to take? And I did have personally a really good success story with the Deuterium depletion and the water once we learned about it. And I had remarkable results. And we have studies showing the results. And I actually tested myself. I tested my resting metabolic rate 3 times in triplicate a day. So that was 9 times a day. Because I could feel it. And after a while, it's almost, you wonder, is it the placebo effect? Am I just making this up? But because I had those numbers, the doctor said, the numbers don't lie. So I had a, really, I was talking to patients about it, but it enabled me to feel really much more confident about incorporating this into my practice.
So tell me how this all transitioned into the work that you're doing now with the deuterium depletion.
It was really simple, really. I just had my own clients, patients that have been following me around and with me for a long time. And, I was excited. This was new information, and I just shared it with them rather simply. I kept it fairly simple. And I will, speak to your audience as well, how I can explain it so they'll have a simple understanding of this. But almost all of them would turn to me and say, well, I want to know. I would explain to them a little bit about what deuterium is, give them a little cell physiology, and make the connection for them. How those two things can really have a large effect on all your systems and health and well-being and health conditions. So everybody pretty much would turn to me and say, hey, Anne, I want to know what my deuterium levels are. And the next thing was they would say, well, I know someone really ill. I know someone with Alzheimer's. I know someone with cancer. So I was just naturally incorporating it and telling my patients about how to do this. And along the way, Dr. Q and Dr. Boris and Dr. Shamai are still really coordinating to put a lot of these things together. And it was just really fortunate that these 3 scientists met. They all had their own pieces of it, but fortunately they met and they were able to continue to work together and move this along. It's been in Europe for 30 years. They put together these test kits, and it was being improved upon all the way. Then we decided, well, let's open a clinic, right, and really share this more with Los Angeles. But in the beginning, yes, it was. We are all practitioners and researchers, and honestly not the best marketers, so we really just had my clientele, and we had this big office, but we did not have the skills to really get the word out there yet. And then I thought, a little bit silly, because this really is amazing, and all of us felt like it should be general information. And I would like, it feels, I'm so confident in it, and it feels like it's really basics of how we live and who we are, hydrogens and our health in general, that I would like to be able to not just do this to my own clients. I think we need to really get the world to know about this. Big for me, I was just a small, one practitioner person. But that's what we've been doing since then. It's been growing. Not only Dr. Boris and Dr. Q, they're thinkers. They're very big thinkers. So there's still a lot to be learned about deuterium, and I'll start in a moment if you want. I'm explaining it so people have no idea of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, please, if you can provide a little bit of background into what exactly deuterium is for our audience who may be unfamiliar with that.
Enough of me. Let's get back to the science. So what we're talking about is deuterium, and deuterium is actually a hydrogen. It's an atom just like hydrogen, an element, the periodic table, and the difference between the two is one has an extra neutron, and that's deuterium. Think of duet, double, twice. It makes deuterium, or this hydrogen atom, twice as big and twice as heavy. So there is a difference between the two, and that difference can have a lot of physical and biochemical effects in our biological systems. So deuterium is natural. It's like, hydrogen's natural, oxygen's natural, deuterium is natural in our environment. And our body is always trying to create homeostasis or balance in many ways, by maintaining the right blood pressure and maintaining your heart rate and maintaining your correct mineral levels. It's doing the same with deuterium. I'll just go back a little bit to how it can affect us. We are cells. We are many cells, and our cells also have inside them mitochondria. It's new for a lot of people, but a lot of people are hearing about the mitochondria lately. It's also known as powerhouse of the cell. And inside our cells, certain cells have a lot more, like the heart needs a lot of mitochondria because it's the powerhouse of the cell, and your heart needs a lot of energy, as does your brain, as does your liver, as do your organs. And there's probably around about 2,000 mitochondria for each cell. So it's to be tiny here, right? And it's less in the skin, they don't require as much energy, so it can be around 5. We kind of average it out. So let's say we've got 1,000 mitochondria in our cell, each cell. And inside each mitochondria, to be the powerhouse of the cell, they need engines, right? Our energy. So they are called nanomotors, tiny, tiny little nanomotors. And inside each mitochondria, the mitochondria, if people look at it, I recommend taking a look, getting to know what your mitochondria looks like, and you'll see all these little curves, and these little nanomotors are added all through the matrix of the mitochondria. They rotate. They exchange protons. Each time protons or hydrogens are moving in, they're creating cellular energy, or they're creating this exchange. And our energy that our cells make is called adenosine triphosphate, which we call ATP. These tiny little motors that are in there are rotating at about 9,000 RPM, which is faster than a Ferrari engine. So I just like to think about it. I like people to kind of imagine in their head that, the numbers and the amount of things that are in your tiny, tiny little cell, and the performance that's going on in there. So cellular energy that's made by these nanomotors is required for everything that's happening in our body, for our brain to work, for us to pump blood, for our liver to filter out toxins, and many things that, to move and to function and to run faster and all those things, but all the trillions of things that happen that we don't even have to think about. Grow new hair, heal your skin. If you cut it, it'll go to and heal it without you having to think about it. So I want people to think about energy on the small scale, not the kind of energy that you get when you put caffeine in your body. It's more the natural energy. Our body, whoever designed us so meticulously that we produce our own cellular energy. And it's really very important for us to understand and imagine what our cells look like and how that's doing that, because it's being impeded. Our body's cells are being slowed down from producing the appropriate amount of energy. And more so in the last few decades, we have feelings why. I want you to think about the deuterium again. It makes water, just like hydrogen makes water. Where water is H2, 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. But if deuterium gets in there, it can be a hydrogen, a deuterium, and then an oxygen, making that water molecule. And just imagine that, first of all, I could just go back a little bit. I have people think about engine. That's what's inside our cells. Think about your car engine. If your car engine, if you don't change the oil and it gets very thick and heavy and gluggy, it creates resistance against that engine motor, and the motor can't go. You can't get to be where you're going, where you want to go. What would you do about that? You would get some thin oil and pour it in to dilute that heavy oil out. So what happens inside our cells that's attempting to make all of this energy, if there's an overload of these heavier, larger deuterium atoms making that water, not heavy water, that it becomes thicker and heavier. And as it's rotating, those protons are rotating through those nanomotors energy. If there's too many of the deuterium ones, they will break those motors. So, a car engine, you can get another car, but these are our motors. We have many, many of them, but you have to think about, there's so many numbers here. I don't want to overwhelm people, but how many hydrogens are rotating every second that it really can build up into creating a disruption when there's an overload of deuteriums in there. Breaking the motors, now the cells can't make energy, and our energy in general declines. Also, our funding, whatever that energy is supposed to fund in our body, declines. So it's, people vary in many ways what happens to them when they become unfunded. But we do feel it can really interfere with a lot of biochemical reactions that occur in our body. It even switches the way, because it's heavier on one side, the water, so it can switch the way it moves. It's just, people can go to the website and they can learn a lot more. I don't want to make it too detailed here. I just like people to have that visualization of, you're driving down the road and something's out of balance. It's not going to run one side of your car down more faster than the other. So we are very involved in studying deuterium, teaching people about deuterium and trying to educate people in general. Even in middle school, Dr. Boris went in recently to children in middle school, and they got it really quickly. What's nice about this, people are understanding it rather quickly, and it's making sense, and it's definitely resonating with them, and they are really willing to be open and learn more, and to do what's called a deuterium lifestyle. So I can go into a little bit, if you like, about, because people are going to want to know, why is this deuterium becoming an overload when our body is always trying to stay in balance. And we do know that the deuterium content in our environment has increased in the last few decades, the last few hundreds of years in general. But we also have changed the way we live more in the last few decades than we have in past history. Particularly with our foods and with technology, for example. In the 50s and 60s, everybody got busier. Often mum had to go to work also, so convenience foods came along. So people were changing their diet more from, our great-great-grandparents were eating more natural products. They weren't mass-produced, they weren't full of GMOs, which GMOs make things grow. And one of the issues with deuterium, it makes things grow, which I'll explain to you later how that affects us on a physiological level. There's more to food. There's definitely, we went into processed foods. My parents did it. To make it, we didn't realize, we didn't know it was unhealthy. We were thinking it's going to be more convenient. But what we're learning now, that it's actually creative damage that's going to create a lot of inconvenience down the road. So as far as being in our food environment, in carbohydrates high. And also the reason sugar is bad for us is because it's high in deuterium. A lot of things are starting to make sense to us now, why things are advantageous and why things are detrimental to us. And a lot of it will come back to deuterium once you learn more and start to think more about how our bodies work. So we know that it's just increased in our atmosphere also, and much more difficult, almost impossible now to find natural water on planet Earth that isn't high in deuterium. Since it's heavier, it's actually, we do find in higher elevations it's lower because it's too heavy, so that high. And so it's higher in lower elevations, and also if we buy big bodies of water, hydrogen in our oceans, they're actually currently about 155 out of 1 million hydrogens are deuterium. And so therefore, if you do live close to the ocean or in a humid environment, it is in the atmosphere. So not only are we eating and drinking more of it, we're also breathing it in. Yeah.
Can you explain the biological process that takes place, for example, through photosynthesis, how the plants produce oxygen and we convert that into water through the mitochondria and so on, that whole circular process of exhaling carbon dioxide, which is taken in by plants and so on?
Yeah, I'll probably do it rather simply. Our biochemist is the best person to go through that process with you. He can tell you any biochemical reaction that's occurring in your body. But we do take in sunlight. Actually, in plants, they also have a mitochondria that's called the chloroplast. And the same as in our body's always working to protect our nanomotors from the mitochondria by pushing it away or exchanging it for a regular hydrogen. The chloroplast is doing the same thing. It's always trying to protect and it's pushing away their deuterium out of the green part, and green plants are low in deuterium. But the sunlight creates the photosynthesis in the chloroplasts and makes oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange. I think Honestly, Ethan, I think our biochemist will be able to explain it better, though. Yeah, I think I'll leave that to him.
Well, maybe you can illustrate, for example, camels live in the desert. What I'm trying to get some understanding around for the audience is that our bodies actually produce water versus having to consume water. Can you explain that concept a bit?
Next. So let me just see how to start. So as far as deuterium goes, we work to make sure that we have appropriate levels of deuterium inside our cells and inside our bodies. And we have various ways of doing that. But what's also very interesting, inside that cycle that we were talking about, where we make our energy, our ATP, is known as the TCA cycle or the Krebs cycle. And yes, it is producing energy, but it has another function that we're now learning about. It actually is this hydrogen recycling plant, and it also we actually make our own deuterium depleted metabolic water inside our bodies. And the way we can kind of explain this to people in comparison to the animal world, there's many animals that don't even need to consume water, particularly desert animals. And when we look back in mankind, he didn't walk around carrying water bottles with him. He wasn't drinking water all day long. He didn't have access to it. If he did, he could have been eaten at the watering hole. They ate differently from us. And you can even look at the animal family. And for example, a lion, when there's a kill, they will eat the fat and the organs first and leave the muscle to the vultures. So they were eating a lot more fat than what we have been in the past few decades. And we also look at the camel, and we try to explain to people the reason the camel actually does not need to consume water. And, even with lizards that have little fat pads on their body, that's fat on the camels in their humps. And they actually use that fat to make their own deuterium depleted metabolic water inside their bodies so that they can get away without consuming a lot of water. What's interesting is the camels live a deuterium depleted lifestyle, where they have their own natural deuterium depletion mechanisms working for them. When you eat fat, 100 grams of fat, your body can produce 110 milligrams of metabolic water, whereas carbohydrates, the same 100 grams, will be converted to 55 milligrams of water. So we do cleave a lot more of this metabolic deuterium depleted water from fats than we do from carbohydrates. So it's just good for people to understand this and realize that fats really have a beneficial effect for us in many ways. Our brain is made of fat, but this is why the ketogenic diet, for example, has become so famous, because it is a high-fat diet, and people are doing it for all sorts of reasons successfully, to lose weight particularly, but for cognition and inflammation in general. Many people are using it for all sorts of reasons. But we've learned now that the reason the ketogenic diet works is because of its high-fat content. It's depleting deuterium. So these people who are eating this high-fat diet are able to convert that fat, not into fat actually on their bodies, they convert it into more metabolic water and energy. And fat creates a more sustainable energy. It satiates you, it keeps you away from hunger for longer. So that's part of our program, is to educate people about which foods are contributing to their deuterium load and which ones are helping you to lower your deuterium. So that's why, there is a famous story, I think it's in The Alchemist, where a young African boy goes to the elderly man and says, I want to go across the desert, I need a camel. And he explains to him, he says, no, you need a horse. And I think he gets a little bit upset, well, I want a camel. And he explained to him that, if you take a horse across the desert, or if you plan to, he can get old and you can see him aging. If his head's going down, if he's getting grey, his knees are getting wobbly, you'll know he's not going to make it to the desert this time. So take a different horse, but don't take him. So he was kind of advising him not to take a camel. Since a camel is deuterium depleted, he doesn't age like other animals do. In fact, they just live. You don't really notice changes in them. They don't, droop down. They don't get old in the legs. And they may just drop dead in the middle of the desert with you there all by yourself. So we try to help people understand that that's essentially how mankind wants to live. And mankind did used to live, right? They would, unless they were eaten by another animal, they would fight with another people. that they were really living a long, healthy life. They were much more attuned to nature than we are, and they were outdoors, they were receiving sunlight, and much more physically active, and only eating natural foods that they caught or collected themselves. And they were lower in deuterium in those times, but now our generation is having a lot of changes compared to that, and it shows in how they live in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. There's a lot of decline in people's health and quality of life in those years, and we would like people to understand that if you really can maintain your cellular energy and the fuel that's going to repair things and stop things from your joints from breaking down and keep your brain functioning, that you can live a long, healthy life where you're productive, you can think clearly, you have joy and good energy to be productive, rather than what sadly we do see a lot of those people doing now is being in homes or really needing to be taken care of by their families and just not really enjoying their life. Our goal is to teach people this is not necessary, and by learning a few deuterium depletion lifestyle changes, they can make a big impact on how that process will happen. So what do we do about it? That's what everybody wants to know, right? What do we do about this? So our scientists have for over 30 years in Europe been using deuterium depleted water. They actually make this water, since it's hard to find on planet Earth anymore. And so it's like the same thing about when you're trying to get that thick oil out of your car engine. By consuming this low or depleted in deuterium water, it's going to deplete the water out of our cells. And that can be a very fast and efficient process for people, since we are able to use our testing kits prior, and then after they've been doing some deuterium depletion for a while, we can see that really working quickly as far as lowering deuterium levels. And the good thing about that, or the bad thing about deuterium, is the more that you accumulate through our environment or food or unawareness of other factors that I will explain and how your body removes it naturally, the more you get. The more you get, the more you lose your energy to remove it, therefore the more you get. So it goes in this cycle where it makes it more difficult to recover. So the water is fabulous because it quickly lowers your level, so you'll start to regain some cellular energy. And our body does have many natural mechanisms for managing deuterium levels, likely many that we don't know about yet, but our doctors are constantly thinking. But we do know that REM sleep is a deuterium depleting mechanism. And so we want to make sure that we assess people's sleep. Deep sleep is also when our body uses this new energy to go and repair and restore things that have gone awry. So we always try to educate people about their own things that they can do to be aware of, to make sure that they can continue to remove deuterium once they get their levels down into the range where they can function again properly. Now, we need to maintain them at that level for a few months. We have a lot of very healthy people, that biohackers or people who are really smart enough to be in good shape, but also I'm going to make sure I don't go down a bad path and I'm going to maintain this health. They are on the deuterium depleted water generally for a minimum of 3 or 4 months. And along the way, we don't want people to use the water as a crux to deplete their deuterium or to just rely on the water, because we do have other ways of doing it ourselves, and we teach people how to live a deuterium depletion lifestyle. We call it the 360-degree deuterium depleting lifestyle. And since we essentially treat our clients with the use of air, food, water, sunshine and light therapies, and appropriate exercise. They're the 5 modules that we utilize, all natural, to help people regain their health or to maintain their health. The other 2 we do think about is, their mindset and, how long they've had troubles, because some people are at the end of their rope and, they've given up a lot. So we want to see how people's motivation are and how well they're going. So we can hold their hand along the way. We want to determine, what stage they're in their thought processes, and what also support they have from their family and friends. But essentially, we use those 5 first, and the air part is is it's called the Breathe Right module. And we incorporate all of these, or most of these modules, with our patients so that they can lower their deuterium with the water, but then also start to continue to lower it by themselves, and to also kick in their own natural methods of depleting deuterium. So our doctors did realize, yes, we've got people depleting their deuterium. However, in certain parts of the world, it's higher and lower. There's not a great difference, but in certain places, we're really breathing in rather high deuterium levels. And so the answer to that was they came up with a mask that you can wear, particularly when you're consuming the deuterium depleted water. You will collect the air in that mask when you're wearing the mask, and it will have less deuterium than the air in your house. So you will rebreathe this deuterium depleted water. You will also rebreathe some of your own carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide tells your hemoglobin to release oxygen to your tissues. Therefore, you become more oxygenated. That oxygen actually loves to grab a hold of deuterium, and it doesn't release it until you excrete it. So the Breathe Right module has quite a few benefits. And also we teach you breathing techniques that you can do to increase the benefits of this wearing the mask. We will teach people how long they can measure, how long they can hold their breath. They will see that number rise as they go through the program, which is very motivating for them. They like to see changes going on. It helps them to get on board and stick with it and feel, okay, I'm really doing the right thing here. And we do know that cancer patients or cancer cells don't like oxygen. It just helps the patient be more robust by increasing their oxygen content and at the same time depleting their deuterium levels. So that's the air part. The food part, we educate people, and many people do know about the ketogenic diet. We just clear it up, what's a little bit of a difference between ketogenic and deuterium depleting. And we just have conversations with people about what they like to eat, because people can do this, as I mentioned to you, we have carnivores doing this, and we have vegetarians and vegans doing this. So my goal is just to educate people about what foods are high and low in deuterium, and they can tailor it to themselves. So I can go over that with you for your audience a little bit later, but we really make sure we take care of the food components, so people can always think about when they're putting something in their mouth, is it high in D's or is it high in H's? And that's forevermore going to be in their mind when they eat. Air, food, water. Yes, we use the deuterium depleted water, but as part of the food part, we educate people to eat more fats and the correct type of fats, and enable them to increase this own production of deuterium depleted metabolic water themselves, so that they eventually, down the road, they don't even need to consume so much water. We all got into the last few decades, and I made the mistake too of telling everybody to drink more water, and now I realize I was encouraging them to drink high deuterium water. And we just realized that it also changes some of our anti-diuretic hormone, and just consuming this high amount of water is just not natural and not necessary once you're eating the right things. The higher you are in deuterium, the more thirsty you will become. The more carbohydrates you eat, the more water you will feel you need to consume. But slowly over time, by incorporating fats into your diet, you will start to make more water, and your thirst will decrease and your need for water will decrease. We use sunshine and light therapy for many reasons. We can use sunshine, of course, for natural vitamin D production, but we are aware that we have light receptors in our retina, in our skin, and in our gut. They have a lot of effects on our body, but also for melatonin production. Melatonin is help maintain our circadian rhythm, our sleep-wake cycle. It's also anti-inflammatory, and also puts you into REM sleep. And melatonin, actually, while you're in that REM sleep, can increase cell repair. So we want to always look at people's sleep. It's part of someone's lifestyle, right? We always look back and didn't really appreciate sleep or pay too much attention to it. But I know in the last few years, we're just seeing in the magazine and seeing books how important sleep is. We're finally appreciating that. But we like to help people understand why. REM sleep is when you're removing deuterium, and deep sleep you're using to repair things. But we want people to understand also that nature has given us this natural light that is very healing for us, but as man has gone along in time, from being outdoors, we then went indoors and we're clothed and we're not out in the sunshine. Our skin's not, being exposed to the sunshine. We're not even outdoors often enough. And even if we are, we're wearing sunglasses and preventing that sun to hit our retina. And just down the road, it's led us to also be into the age now where there's so much technology, and we are producing a light that's not natural to us. It's a man-made light, and it doesn't have the same spectrum as natural light does. Natural light has the full spectrum, but it has a part that I think is about 7% is what's called blue light. And all of these lights that we have in our homes, and it's also being emitted very much from technology, is emitting blue light. And blue light can have a damaging effect on the mitochondria and melatonin production. So we educate people how to enable them not to be exposed so much, to limit their exposure, or to help, we have them use certain glasses so they're blocking these lights out of their eyes, and also helping them to use natural sunlight to get their circadian rhythm back into balance to repair their sleep. And the last part also, we talk about appropriate exercise. Depending where somebody's at, the more muscle you have, the more mitochondria you have. So some people are very fatigued, so we just work with them as an individual, check what their energy levels are, and just help guide them into what the most appropriate exercise for them is at the time. All of the people that work with us here at the Centre for Deuterium Depletion, we take an intake, get to know them as much as we can. They are given a personal protocol that pertains to them based upon their information, and they will receive everything that they need, including all the modules and all the education. We send them videos on how to learn the breathing techniques, really review the foods with them. We have follow-up calls along the way and then we can check in, responding, see how they're responding. Retest gives us a good indication of how they're responding to the program, and then we'll adjust their exercise, their food programs if needed be, along the way. Let me think where else. Yeah.
So to back up a little bit, the conventional wisdom is that we should drink 8 glasses of water per day. How accurate is that, and what do you think the actual requirement, if there is one, would be?
So a protocol is written for our patients based upon their height and their weight and their condition. So they will always receive detailed instructions on how much water to consume in the beginning. And personally for me, I was low in energy and I felt better consuming it. And the water is actually very light to drink. It's very easy to drink. And I was drinking quite a bit of water because I was feeling better. But without me even really paying a lot of attention to it, just because I've been doing it for more than a year now, that I've really slowed down just naturally. I just noticed the other day, that's the same bottle. I haven't really drank that much water. You just naturally over time don't feel as thirsty, and that's because your body is making its own metabolic water. In the beginning, some people out of habit, or they've just become accustomed to consuming so much water, have a little bit of trouble if they have to decrease the amount. Some people are drinking gallons of water. So we just tell them, just try to stick with the program for now. And if you can just wait 10 minutes and see how your thirst is, if so, still have a sip of some water, see if that helps you, but also just have some butter. Sometimes it's just a dryness in the mouth. And some people in the beginning, they just choose to drink more water until they get accustomed to it, until they can slow it down, particularly as they change their diet and decrease the carbohydrates. And if you increase the fats, you'll just naturally not feel the desire. So we look at it, how much they're consuming when we get started with them, but then your body has all these natural processes that occur once you deplete your deuterium. And that's actually how my job became more as a deuterium depleter, because I was working with patients and always trying to think and take new classes and what's really going on with this person and what's the best thing to do to help them get on track. And it's confusing. It's hard. It's hard for doctors to sometimes figure it out. Is it the liver? Is it the brain? Is it all sorts of things are going on, and it's difficult to discern sometimes. So we were always doing a lot of testing. Check to see what's going on in the gut, check to see what the stress hormone levels are, and blood work, of course, things like that. But I've learned now that once your deuterium levels become in the range, what we call the desirable range, which is below 130 ppm, So since it's, in our atmosphere in the high 140s and in our oceans at 150, most of us have risen above 140 ppm. So, lost my train of thought, sorry.
Well, I guess my question is, the conventional wisdom of drinking 8 glasses of water, is that actually accurate?
No. So in the beginning, some people need to do it out of habit or just being accustomed to it. But yeah, eventually people don't feel the need to consume so much water because they're not being dehydrated because they are making more of their own metabolic water. They're converting the fat intake into metabolic water. So we actually make a lot of water inside our bodies. I have numbers, I can find them for you, but it's a remarkable amount of water that we make. I did just test it one time myself at home by putting a humidifier in my bedroom, and I was really shocked at how full it was from one person throughout the night. So water is very, very important to maintain that we have the appropriate amount of water, not a high intake of high deuterium water. In general, plants even in general, the water part is the highest in deuterium, and we've shown people the coconut where we take an MRI of the coconut, and you can see that the water part is darker and higher in deuterium, whereas the fat and the flesh part are much lighter and they are lower in deuterium. And not only do we have the diagnostics for people to test themselves, but a lot of people send us their well waters. We can test their own water, and a lot of people send certain foods in that they really want to know that's something they want to consume. We can test the deuterium content. A lot of it, though, beforehand, we even give them this general information, and they can kind of know from that information that it's possibly going to be high or low in deuterium. The test kits consist of 2 parts. It comes with, we call it the breathy test, where you breathe into a tube and we are collecting the condensation from the heart and lungs, and that's going to give us an indication of your deuterium load in your tissue. And the second one is the saliva test, where we'll measure the deuterium load in what you're excreting. So we'll compare those 2 together, and we will be able to determine how well or unwell your own excretion methods are working, and then we'll also get an indication of what your load is. The follow-up test, as always, is the most important test because we will be able to see changes and how people are responding. But people can do these tests at home, in their own home, and then they just mail it back to us. So it's easy for people to do without having to go to a clinic or having to come and see us.
So when you say a high-fat diet, just to be clear for the audience, obviously that doesn't include things like hydrogenated oils and such. So are we talking about a saturated fat diet?
In some ways, people who like to eat meat, we are eating saturated fat. We're eating, bacon and beef and tallow and lard. And the difference between, we learned that the ketogenic diet, because Dr. Q was actually making ketogenic meals to be shipped nationwide for cancer patients. And at that time, they were measuring ketones and making sure the fat content was the perfect percentage. And once he learned about deuterium, he realized it's more important that fat comes from a source that's low in deuterium. And all of these, hydrogenated oils and, margarine, which came along and my family ate it too in the 60s and 70s, they're all hydrogenated, they're full of high deuteriums. And so we were taking a lot in that way. So we want to make sure people understand to eat the natural fats. You can have plant-based fats, of course, which is, avocados and avocado oil and coconut, if it's kind of in your territory where you live, and then all of the olive oils and ghee, things like that. And we just make sure when we eat fat from an animal source that animal has eaten naturally, because if they have been fed grains, their fat will have accumulated the deuterium in those grains. And that's really what has made him aware now that we don't actually need to be measuring all this. We just need to make sure that their fat intake is not loaded in deuterium. Even for fish, we want to make sure those fish have not been farm raised. So wild fish is important. So that information is really helping people to be able to cut down their deuterium intake and increase their own metabolic water just by learning how to eat and which foods and which fats are good and which are not so good.
Now, so the reason why ghee or butter from grass-fed cows is lower in deuterium is because they're eating green grasses, I assume, the chlorophyll content?
True. Yeah. The green part of the plant pushes the deuterium away, and it does push it towards the fruit part, which is new information and hard for a lot of people to take in, because we've always been taught that fruit is so good for us and it's full of a lot of nutrients and phytochemicals, as it is. However, we do eat a lot more fruit than we used to. I grew up with blackberries, and we would pick them every now and then. And a few years ago, I had blackberries in the backyard, but it was only around for 2 or 3 weeks. And by the time the deer and the birds and the wind got to it, there was not much left for me. But even a long time ago, I did cut out sugar, which did include fruit for me. I thought it was because of the fruit content. I didn't know about the deuterium part of it, but I did really lower my fruit intake a long time ago. Just know that as you lower your deuterium levels and your motors can work again and you can make cellular energy again, your body becomes more efficient at extracting nutrients from food, right? So it's not like we need to overload with all of these nutrients. And people are eating fruit from the other side of the world in the opposite season when it's not natural to your environment, and they're eating punnets of it, which is not the way we ate it in the first place. So I want to educate people about that, to think about the fruit because of the deuterium content, and to think about nature. If it's really not in your area, it's not the right time to be eating that. Unless we just all need to listen to nature a little bit more than we have been, because we've gotten away from it. So the green, that also explains why the green plants are good for us, because they're low in deuterium. Yes, they do have a lot of good, great minerals and nutrients in it, but again, you will extract nutrients very efficiently as your cells are working properly, as will your own detox mechanisms, right? You need energy for them to work. So, you know, as we were working a lot of the time upstream as practitioners, trying to fix the gut and fix the hormones and do all these things upstream, when I heard about this, it did make sense to me, since I was always like, what's the best thing to start with first? And, well, getting down to the cellular level does make a lot of sense to me. And that's why I was really eager to just study this and learn more and utilize this in my practice. Because I do know that the body, you know, in chiropractic school, the first day we learn that our bodies have its own innate intelligence, is what we call it. And we understand that we're just here to make sure that innate intelligence is able to do what it's supposed to do. And it's being impeded by these certain things. And as a chiropractor, we make sure that your central computer, your brain, is able to communicate via your nervous system, through your spine, out through all the peripheral nerves to your organs, to tell them what to do. And if there's the inflammation, or, you know, we call it subluxation in there, it can create pressure around that area, and then you're not getting the messages from your computer, from your brain, to tell your body how to function properly. So we remove that obstacle. In acupuncture, we work to create harmony and balance along in acupuncture. It's all, our body is nature. And so we're always trying to keep the dampness and the heat and the coolness and stagnation in harmony, and things moving correctly. And in nature, we can, even emotions can create an imbalance in heat and cold and blood stagnation and energy moving through our body. And we have a meridian for each organ. And in Qigong, for example, you will learn that there's an emotion corresponding to each organ. And it can go back and forth. If there's damage to the organ, it can create an emotional response. And if there's a certain emotion, anger, there's a specific organ that can correspond to that emotion. So we are using the needles and meridian therapy and Qigong and herbs to remove this impediment, this stagnation, whatever is blocking our energy, which we've taken from sunlight, you know, which is given to us, that we can have it removed properly throughout our body. So when I learned about deuterium, it made sense to me. I was like, well, it's not me. It's just, this is nature. Dr. Boris has taught us that this is a physics law. This is the way it does occur. There's no disputing this. It makes sense. And so I was very happy to go, now I can really make sure that your cells have enough energy to utilize your chi and to utilize the messages from your brain to go and do what they are supposed to do. So by removing this obstacle of deuterium, your body is really able to use what the innate intelligence that it has to do what it has been designed to do, which, you know, I think that we don't know how long people lived a long time ago. Some people do, they've checked bones, etc. But I know that there was a lot longer lifespan without these diseases. And in fact, the other day I took some of my credits at my acupuncture school, and one of the doctors was telling me that there's a famous Chinese doctor who's written quite a few books, but he lived till 115. He lived at a high mountain, and the only water that he consumed was the dew on the leaves, which is deuterium depleted water. So, we're really understanding a lot more now about when I always learned that when people were ill, in the 60s, 70s, if they had tuberculosis, that they would go to the mountains and recover. And we know now that a lot of that is contributed to their breathing in lower deuterium. It's too heavy to float that high. And they're just living, and they're probably consuming the water from the higher elevations. And so, we just start to think about many things and how deuterium is related to animals, plants, and humans in general. It has been used for many years in geology to determine, whether a grape came from that area, but we are really pertaining it now to us, so we can learn how to utilize this deuterium depletion in our biological systems to improve our health and maintain our health.
I think a lot of people who are on a more healthy path have believed that fruits are healthy. So just to understand the mechanism by which fruits end up being high in deuterium is because green plants push the deuterium into the fruit. Is that correct?
Deuterium actually, Ethan, is what makes things grow. Children and teenagers need deuterium to grow. It's just once we get past that growth stage, we don't want to be growing out or growing things inside us anymore. And that's determined upon deuterium levels. They make things grow, including bugs, bacteria, viruses, and fungus. And so think about a fruit. It has a lot of seeds in it that will grow into something else. And I'm not... it just depends on the patient. Most people get on board because they're making a commitment to getting this deuterium in good range so that they can be successful. But I tell them, by the time next year, when your levels are in good shape, you can, as you used to, when you were younger, when your body worked better, consume some fruit because your body now has mechanisms to manage it, right? So it's not forever, but we are overloaded, and the best way to fix that is not to continue to put deuterium in our body. So it's not a lifelong thing. It's just a way to get people feeling better faster and making the process a little bit faster for them. A lot of people have been through very long processes of getting well. And we do have a lot of people who have come to us who've had spent years, and feeling better, doing all sorts of actually natural things that have improved their health, improved their sleep, improved their energy, their cognition. But once they do the deuterium depletion, they bounce back. I've seen people after 4 years of feeling better, not looking so great, but after 2 months I've seen them again and they have been transformed because now they have the cellular energy to utilize the energy from the sun and to extract the nutrients from their food and to repair and heal and to be able to recover from exercise faster so that they can continue to do more. It enables whatever you do to work better. And, even when it comes to a lot of the supplementation that I was, providing for my patients and a lot of people are doing to make themselves feel better, a lot of the time I feel like it's propping them up. And if you take them away, it's not going to work for very long, but it's not natural for us to be taking supplements. That's just not natural to mankind. I understand why we do it, but what we want to do is get the body working better by itself. And if there's been a lot of damage that's occurred, because some people have decades of deuterium overload, once we get through the first few months, then we may come along and just intercept with some herbal formulas. Herbs are green plants from nature, and sometimes supplement if we need to help people get going a little bit better. But it depends, case-to-case basis, of course. People ask me about their supplements, and I don't like to take too much away in the beginning because I don't want them to, if it's propping them up, then they'll feel horrible and they'll feel like, well, this is not working for me. So we just go slowly through them and figure out what we feel is the most important and enable them to realize that they can really get a lot more nutrients out of their food once they are low in deuterium. So as far as fruit goes, yes, it does provide phytonutrients, but I want people to understand that it is high in deuterium. And if your goal is to lower your deuterium levels and manage them and manage your cellular health, then you're taking some steps forward, but a little bit step backwards with high deuterium foods and fruit in general. Avocado is a fruit, yes, but it's a fat fruit. It's not a carbohydrate fruit, and therefore fat, low in deuterium, will sustain you longer, enable you to make more metabolic water. Avocado guacamole is fantastic. The fat from coconut is great, but not the water. The wet part is high in deuterium, yet the fat part is low. I think I mentioned we've had people in New Zealand and they're doing great. But when I finally got to speak to them about the diet, they did inform me that they own an orchard and they make jam. And I did feel bad because I knew I was pretty much telling them that their lifestyle and their livelihood is contributing to, or was counteracting what they're trying to do. But I had to tell them the truth, and they understood it. But so, it's nice to be able to share the right information so that people can make their own decisions and be able to think for themselves.
Now, Steve Jobs was known to be a fruitarian. Do you think that might have contributed to him dying so young of cancer?
Yeah, that I can't say, of course, because everything's so involved. But I if my best friend or even my enemy had cancer, I would encourage them to not add fruit into their diet, therefore sugar, therefore deuterium, because if they're doing that, first of all, they're adding fuel because tumors, they thrive. Deuterium is their fuel. So you're feeding the tumors more, we know that. And also, as you lower your deuterium, you're regaining cellular energy so that your body actually, in a way, ages backwards, as does your immune system. So now you have a much more robust immune system to make natural killer cells to go and, eat those tumor cells. So you're taking away the fuel and you're increasing the healing properties. So I think by being a fruitarian, I don't think that would be a good idea from what I've studied and what I've learned as far as deuterium goes. But Steve Jobs didn't have this information at the time. I mean, it's been known in Europe and been utilized in Europe for 30 years. Our physicist and one of our co-founders, Gabor, has done a lot of research and studies, and you'll see clinical research and studies on our website. And it really, until Dr. Boas came along and we were able to put the test kits together, it's only in the last few years, and even doctors call me and say, I'm so ashamed that I don't even know about this. And it's like, well, neither did we. So we all, I wish I had it beforehand for my family, things that I didn't know about. I wish I'd have known about a long time ago. But I can really just be very grateful now that I have this information. I'm a very shy, actually, quiet person. I had my own one-on-one clients. I'm very comfortable with one person, but I never spoke out. I never spoke in public. I never did podcasts before. Once I saw this happening, I thought, shame on you, Anne. I think how can you not tell people about this? So here I am speaking about it to people at the bank and wherever I go. I think it's important for everybody to know about deuterium. I think it will be general knowledge one day once we, you and I and everybody else get to spread the word and people can really understand it. That's what's important. And that, I feel really good about it. I mean, I was always happy being able to do what made me feel good, but now it's gone to a big scale. And not only that, just personally, we have studies on the side, but, people don't often want to or know how to even, conclude what's in a study. They want to know what I've seen. And I've seen a lot of very good things since we've been doing this, from personally myself, but for many chronic fatigue patients, patients with these underlying infections, we're taking away the fuel for them. Cancer patients, definitely. Our doctors, Dr. Q Collins, he's an immunologist and a cancer researcher, and he will guide the cancer patients. And I've seen patients who I didn't even know if we should start with them in the beginning because we were just starting and they were very, very frail. They're still with us. They're walking to our office instead of being wheeled in a wheelchair. Their oncologists have told them, you don't even look like you have cancer. Instead of being grey, they're bright-skinned and bright mind. They're better off than they are now than when we met them. That's just one person, but I've had the patient just recently we do have a lot of patients who call us because they've been through standard of care and they just don't want to go through it again. We actually encourage them to do so. Dr. Hugh Collins was a vice president of a pharmaceutical company that made a lot of these chemotherapeutic drugs, and he just says the intent was never to use so much. We just want to help oncologists not have to use so much, give them stronger, more robust patients going in so that they don't decline from the standard of care. But we do encourage our patients that we're going to make you stronger and you're going to you'll be able to utilize standard of care and come out of it feeling much different than you did prior. And just last week, when she said, this is my 7th time, and the 2nd time around, I have no chronic fatigue, no chemo brain, I'm at work. People tell me at work I look great. It's pretty fulfilling to hear that. We've had patients who call me, hey, Anne, I'm in remission, young people with stage 4 cancers, a lot of prostate cancer, patients who are now traveling the world, having a good time. I was, in the beginning, I was like, well, this sounds good, and I've seen studies. Does it really work? And I'm still kind of amazed. And when we hear back from these people, it really is working for these people. So it's a very nice feeling. In general, I work with a lot of people who just want more fatigue and brain issues. Like a lot of people are concerned about their cognition and declining, and thinking and reading and being able to focus and continue to learn, right? So they're not slowing down in their brain. And actually, Oxford University has done a study on deuterium depletion and depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia. So there is a lot of studies out there. I think we accumulate deuterium in our brainstem can have effect. I don't know the pathways of that at this point, but that study has been done. But a lot of our patients, and sometimes I think it goes hand in hand with fatigue. When people lose energy, they can become depressed, and sometimes it's hard to figure out which came first. And people who become depressed for whatever reason don't want to go out and participate more, and it goes hand in hand. I've seen many people who just by regaining their energy, they feel back in life again, and they just feel more alive, joyful, and happy, and don't feel depressed anymore. And many people in general just have more energy, but even feel better emotionally, more stable, and that brain is sparking better. They can think more clearly and have more desire and more motivation to do things in life, which is nice.
So is it possible to have low levels of deuterium and have cancer at the same time?
We did see that early on, because we were wondering, we had a cancer patient who was a stage 4 cancer patient, and her deuterium levels were low. So we realized, okay, that's when we really did incorporate the saliva test, so we could compare the two, see how they're excreting, because deuterium can be in the tumors, and it can be taking away from what we're extracting from them. So, the doctors, that's why we take the test, and the doctors, go over it and review it with the patients and explain it to them, because people can vary depending on what's going on with them. But that has happened. And also we've had not very many people close to 130 or below 130. So far, I've seen a few people from British Columbia that are living high, and they're living a very outdoor life. These people are in their 80s, still skiing and high energy and cognition and doing very well. But most people, Ethan, are coming back in the 140s area. So, and 1.01 ppm is a lot when it comes to millions, right? So getting them down to 130 is a big change in their deuterium content and how many deuteriums are hitting their nanomotors. And that's what we're doing. We can see it. We do a pre-test, we'll see a follow-up test, and very quickly those numbers come down, and then they'll stick with it for a while. But forevermore, once they learn these other modules, which they can pretty much do for free at home, they can learn how to eat correctly, they can learn how to wear a mask and breathe correctly. We'll get them sleeping properly using all these other methods, and making sure that they're moving and building muscle. Then they have control, which is a nice thing. They can go through and manage their deuterium levels forevermore. Now, life comes along sometimes, and people get off the program, but you can always get tested once a year and check in and see what's going on and get back on the program. Some athletes like to do it really regularly and periodically because they're very in tune to what's going on in their body. If people do well, though, which a lot of people do, because once they start to feel good and they imagine in their head that this is full of deuterium, they don't really have the desire for that so much anymore. I know people don't like to hear lifestyle change because, that's going to be work and I don't really want to change. But I'm not finding that, because we do make it rather simple. In the beginning, they'll just drink some water. Anybody can do that. They'll start to feel better. They'll have in their mind, okay, fats, they're kind of yummy. We didn't really want to stop eating them in the 80s, but we told they were bad for us, so now great, we can eat them again. That's going to make everything taste great. Breathing exercises are pretty easy to incorporate. You can wear the mask while you're asleep. It's not that big of a lifestyle change, and you can get a lot of benefit from it. And some people do take a little bit of time in actually noticing it. They're generally people who have had decades of deuterium overload and illness, chronically ill people, some who haven't left their bedroom in 2 years. They've taken longer to notice anything, but everybody does have their own time frame. I try to explain it like this. Imagine your bank account. If it gets really low in funds, you have to make the priority where to put those funds, and it's a roof over your head and feed your family and take care of your health. And that's what happens with our innate intelligence in our body. Once we're funded again with this energy, it's your body that's going to make that priority. And it knows more than we do what's going on in there. It may feel like there's something more important underlying that it needs to send that energy to first. So that will vary based upon how you will notice it as far as your symptoms go. It may send that energy, may or may not be where your symptoms are initially. However, having said that, most people report back to me in the first few weeks better energy, sleeping better or not needing to sleep so much, and waking up feeling more refreshed, and the mindset, just they can focus and learn and write and think and be in a bit of a more positive attitude. That's what I hear all the time. And the rest of it really varies depending on case-by-case basis. So we do work with their practitioners if they're not here with us. We have local practitioners we work with, but they have their own practitioners. What we do is help them manage their deuterium levels. But we like to, educate their doctors and collect data from, pre and post from their doctors, and have their practitioners manage them as well along the way. And it's nice because a lot of doctors are seeing their patients respond where they weren't responding before. I think as this gets more and more out there, people are going to realize that this is an essential component to taking care of yourself and to taking care of patients.
So why do you suppose the deuterium levels are so much higher now than they have been and I assume there's some data to support that it was lower in the distant past versus now? Is it because of more use of nuclear reactors or things like that, or just something environmental that changed?
Well, more than two things, but we're taking in more and we're also losing our ability to remove it. Dr. Royce tells me climate change is involved. The ice caps are melting or the deuterium has been sequestered in there, so it's becoming higher in our ocean and our vapors. Yes, our diets have changed from the natural diets to now more processed foods, fast foods, and more hydrogenated foods, and GMO foods, and more carbohydrates in general. That's and also our water has changed on the earth, where it's more difficult for us to we're drinking high deuterium water almost wherever we are, when it's commercial waters or well waters. The other part of it is there's always been stress in the world, and people always have problems, but I think now people have like a low-grade chronic stress due to the faster paced, the economy, and people have to work more, and also the work environment is indoors with all this pollutant light, and this light really affects the mitochondria. It's said that 85 to 95% of these chronic diseases are due to mitochondrial dysfunction. So we are bombarded with a lot more things now that are affecting our mitochondria. We're sitting more, we're not building as much muscle. So that's coming at us from various areas, and that's why we're taking the 360-degree approach. So, other things that are contributing to it is, our outside environment and what we're putting into our body, mostly, and just a lack of being able to have proper sleep. And really, I think a lot of it is just not being outdoors enough and being in nature. We have electromagnetic fields coming from Earth that help us, and we're not even being exposed to that. We're not having our feet on the ground anymore. Therefore, the grounding and the earthing has become a little bit more well-known lately. We live in a great world where everything's at our fingertips, but stuff is being taken away from us also that we used to have. And just appreciate nature. It's been given to us. We need to utilize it to our advantage because it's right there at our fingertips, mostly for free. Vitamin D for sunshine. It's difficult for some people across the country, but as much as you can, appreciate the sun. I know, particularly in Australia, they're concerned about, sun damage. There's a lot of studies, and definitely a lot of people have been overexposed. We're not talking about overexposure, getting sunburnt, but having, your natural levels of vitamin D is important. It will help your melatonin production. These are all things that you can use outside from nature for free once you understand them. So I think a lot of it's our lifestyle.
And how does light therapy help with that? Can you supplement with light therapy, or is it essential to be in sunlight to get those benefits?
The sunlight is what provides the natural vitamin D. You can get vitamin D naturally from cod liver oil and also some vitamin A. We do encourage the natural sunlight. We do know that vitamin D supplementation, and I've seen it help people with colds in their immune system, but we do know that it raises the serum levels. But since it's not natural, we don't know if it's having the same physiological effects as what has been given to us as it is naturally. So we do encourage, trust that first before anything else. Trust what nature has given us rather than what man makes himself. We're not as knowledgeable as nature. So try to get your vitamin D from the sunlight, natural sources if you can. And light therapy, we use light therapy. I've always used it even as a facialist, right? Aesthetician, we use light therapy for improving collagen and elastin production in the skin. As a chiropractor, we used infrared light for healing and for connective tissue to heal. And we've really learnt now, and it's becoming more widespread, this information on how to use near and infrared, red light and near infrared light to work superficially on the skin, but also can penetrate quite deeply into our tissues. As I said before, we have light receptors inside our retina, on our skin, and inside our gut. And I'm thinking, how does the light get inside our gut? It moves by frequency, light moves, and it goes hand in hand, actually, deuterium depletion and light therapy, because if there is a lot of deuterium in there and that light bumps into it, it can fragment the resonance of the light moving through, and it may not get to be where it's going to perform and help you heal and work with your gut bacteria and help the epithelial layer of your gut to turn over and to heal properly. So we actually work with a company called Juve. We looked around at various ones, and people purchase all sorts of red light devices. There's many more coming out now since this knowledge is being more well known. We just happened to meet them, and we just love the people, and they're really good family, and they've got Harvard doctors behind them and good engineers. So that's what I use, and that's what we talk to our patients about mostly. But the light therapy is very effective for people who it's grey and cold and they can't get outdoors, and they can't get out to see the sunshine, because it helps give you that natural spectrum of light that's going to affect your eyes and help your sleep cycle. And particularly, a lot of people are telling me that their sleep cycle is much improved after using the red light therapy. At the same time, though, for men, it can help increase testosterone production. Men and women love the collagen building effects for energy in general, for mitochondria, but also for inflammation, pain. There's many benefits of red light therapy. We send people to the Juve, website, and they have a lot of information and science behind that there. And many of our patients take it on board. They love their Juve light therapy, and it works well with the program. Yeah, I remember we were talking about sleep also. That's one of the things that will help our sleep. And I am, and always have been, and I wish I wasn't, a night owl, born that way, grown up that way. I wish I wasn't, and it's a big challenge of mine. And sleep always was my issue. I'm a little hyper-vigilant and always aware, and I just couldn't go into like a deep sleep. I'm a very light sleeper, and it's been my main thing that I'm always trying to rectify and fix. And the light therapy is very beneficial for that, both outdoors and inside. I want to try to make my own melatonin production rather than taking melatonin, because I feel anytime you take something, you're telling your own body, well, you don't need to do that anymore. So I'm always trying to encourage my own body to do what it's supposed to do. But I just have like a job, going to bed, calming down, taking a warm bath in lavender, trying to retrain my brain and my body to move it ahead. I mean, a lot of scientists tell us that most of your repair happens in the deep sleep phase, which happens in the earlier part between 9 and midnight, right? So if you're going to bed at midnight, you're missing out on a lot of that reparative phase. So that's been a big challenge, and I'm with you. I'm with a lot of our patients out there and trying to change that lifestyle and to make that work for me. And we come in with patients with various ways of doing it. Sometimes we'll use some herbs that'll help them go into more deep sleep or more REM sleep. It's all on an individual conversation basis. Particularly, my brain can get accustomed to something, and then you have to kind of switch it up to see what it's going to react to next. That's why we do use what's called a health tracker in our modules, where we follow people's sleep. We use a Fitbit device, and we can look at their sleep and see if they're in the right phase at the right time, enough REM and enough deep sleep. And patients like it too because they can see it, and then they can watch their habits, and they can go, oh, I did much better that night when I did this, this, and this. But also we will monitor you, and we'll see how you're doing before deuterium depletion. And very often, just by depleting deuterium itself, their sleep patterns will improve. But if not, then we'll reassess and see what else we can do, make sure they're doing all the light therapies and all the breathing techniques and all of the other modules really well to see if they can fix it themselves. If not, we've got like sound therapies, and we all know the benefits of gong and qigong and all sorts of things that do whatever we can to try to help people get that natural sleep cycle back. It's a job for me also.
Now, I've had a number of people on my show over the years, like Dr. Campbell, who did the China study, and other people who are speaking about the blue zones around the world, which are basically areas where people tend to live over 100 years in exceptional health and generally don't get things like cancer or heart disease and things of that nature. Is there any correlation in your research between what's unique about these blue zone areas that may relate to lower deuterium?
It's something that definitely we are thinking about, our scientists are thinking about. We had a discussion about it recently. We were actually in China recently, and I know there's the 7 blue zones, but there are others that they're not known as the famous blue zones. And one of the doctors there grew up next to one of the blue zones in China. So we would like to, we've got so many studies going on that, this pertains to so many areas that we have a little bit of a checklist, what happens next, right? And so we can do each step properly. But that's definitely something we want to look at by measuring people's deuterium levels and see what they are that are living in these areas and studying how they live and, just following that along. Those things do take time to accumulate that data. But that's what we do. Our scientists are researchers, they're scientists, and their goal is, they are, just to let you know, they are very ethical doctors. They've spent their entire lives wanting to contribute to benefiting mankind, and they're serious about it. Whatever it takes, this is their number one priority. And they are always trying to think of what's the best way to do this. So that's down the road, but we have many studies that we're planning to do so that this can really be validated more. And Western medicine, it's known to take about 20 years before it'll bring something or accept something new. So we're hoping to speed that up a little bit by getting as much clinical data as we can. So in order to be a research and data company to collect this for people to learn from, we needed to come up with the test kits, and then we needed to come up with solutions to do so. So we're focusing on getting everything in order, and then the next thing will be to do more clinical studies.
So in the patients that you've been treating, can you share some of the more really significant transformations that have occurred in health? So people with really serious cases that you've managed to resolve and they've improved?
Definitely cancer is one where I was really happy to see people doing better than we thought, or that they even thought that they were going to. And other cases vary. We have all sorts of people calling us, but we do hear from a lot of people that have Lyme's, and I really feel for Lyme's patients. It's not my specialty. Our specialty is lowering deuterium levels and taking away the fuel and making your body stronger. So they all have their own, practitioners helping them with that. And I see people vary in how they respond because it is very complicated, and they have an immune system that can be triggered very easily from anything. And it's so hard for them, and I really feel for them. We did have a case early on of a man who, we had a lot of people also that are sensitive to the electromagnetic frequency. So he had both Lyme's and sensitivity to electromagnetic frequency. So he was in a lot of pain. His cognition, he could really not work very well. He'd actually moved away from civilization to be away from all the electromagnetic fields and to be more in nature. And he got a hold of us, and we got him on the Deuterium Depletion program. It didn't happen fast because he had a lot of things going on, but within a few weeks, he would tell us he's feeling better, his pain is improving. But after a few months, he's good to go. His cognition, I'm ready to go back to work. And he has told us that he wants to be involved. This is so amazing. He wants more people to know about this. He's going back into town, and he's going to raise pigs in a deuterium depleted manner. That was nice to hear. I mean, our own staff here actually had, in fact, some of the people that work for us really came on board in the beginning with transformed lives, a lot of gut issues, headaches, weight issues, unmotivated, just not feeling good at all. And not living a life that they should be at that age, and have done very, very well with this program. They're so happy. They said, I want to work with you for free. I just want to be involved in this. So we've got amazing people working with us here. Everybody that's here, we are family. And, you know, like you, I'm sure, and I've worked in a small room with people. I'm sensitive to people's energy, and I have people around me that we love, vibrate highly, and we're just, you know, I have to be around them, so we have to love each other and enjoy being around each other. And we are very fortunate that who we have working with us here. They get it, and they also get a lot of pride out of being able to contribute to this and make this available. That's, you know, they're getting more pride than much else at this point, but we're growing and things are improving along the way. But we're very, very fortunate to have the people that are involved with us in many areas, not just the people who work in the office with us. We have so many people have come into my life since we've been doing this, but I just, you know, I've also always met some wonderful people, but I'm meeting some very high vibrating people whose purpose is to be, you know, way bigger than, you know, a lot of the population. It's just, I'm very impressed with a lot of the people that we're meeting.
So what's the long-term effect of this sort of treatment? For example, in a lot of more alternative studies these days, they found, for example, that the length of telomeres sort of governs the length of lifespan to some degree. And some people who have poorer diets or high stress tend to shorten their telomeres faster, and they have shorter lifespans and tend to get degenerative diseases early. Is there a genetic component here that sort of limits our lifespan, or do you, in your early stage of research, are you finding that having a deuterium depleted lifestyle could extend lifespan indefinitely, or is there some cap that human beings are just destined to live because of genetic factors?
Asked the doctor's opinion on that early on, and what they've told me is that deuterium actually, it can get into your DNA, it can crink it all up and change the structure of your DNA, and the same with the telomeres. So it's not so much that they're shortened. Once you get that deuterium in there, they're appearing shorter. So by lowering your deuterium, all you're doing is opening them up. As far as longevity goes, you know, we're just starting to do this now, but we do believe that young people who start on this could live a very, very long and very well life program. Who knows? Are they going to live to 150? I think it's highly possible. I mean, we don't, you know, people could live, if they get onto this and enable their bodies to work properly and not really slow down. I can't say a number, of course, but I think people are going to live longer, but not only live longer, have a really good quality of life by, yes, changing their diet, by lowering their deuterium levels and all the other factors, being in nature and just stepping back a little bit and living the way we're really designed to live, rather than inside boxes with fake light and a lot of technology that's stressing people out, I think.
How does blue light contribute to, I mean, is blue light interact in any way with deuterium, or is it just another thing that
it's damaging the mitochondria? And actually red light, and blue light won't do this, but the red light, it actually makes our water less viscous, so less thick. So it's actually enabling our motors to work better in general. The blue light's not going to do that, but the blue light is damaging. It's many studies out there that show how damaging it is to the mitochondria in general. So there's a lot of information out there about light therapy and resonance. So it's pretty easy to obtain a lot of the studies that are sharing this with us, so we can learn about this and avoid it. We do have a lot of people who are very aware of it coming to us, not just the blue light, but just the electromagnetic frequencies in general. And, you know, this is the world we live in. People are not going to stop using, you know, technology. In fact, we're going to be, you know, even more. So what we do focus on, we can't avoid that. We can only really focus on what we can manage, what we can do something about, so we feel if we lower our deuterium levels, same as this man who's gone back into work again, you become stronger, so that now you can deal with a world that's not really the best for us, but you're not going to break down because of it. And the more you take away all the other factors, the things that break us, like the blue light and all the, you know, the constant stresses and the carbohydrates and the deuterium loaded food, and manage your, you know, heavy metal exposure and chemicals in general, and who you're with, you know, whose energy you're around and your thought processes. As long as you can keep those diminished as much as you can, and then make your body stronger. I think you can deal with a lot of things that people are having trouble dealing with now.
We're heading into a world with a lot of smart cities and 5G technology and so on. A lot of people are, of a health conversation anyway, are very concerned about 5G. So you think that having a lower deuterium level will mitigate for those factors?
I do. We are hearing from those people all the time, and where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? You can't, you just have to really make your body stronger. And this is how we know you can make your body stronger. And people can do all sorts of other things if they want. It's only going to increase the benefits of them. But for me, I don't want to mess around up here. I want to get back down to the cellular level. So focus on that, and makes life simpler. And it's very understandable for me. And it will also enable your body to appreciate all of the other things that you do, so that they're responding better.
Is it possible for somebody who's older, I know you mentioned earlier, young people start this program, they could live for maybe 150 years theoretically. Is it possible for somebody older to reverse the damage that's been done, or is that already set in place?
Your body has reparative mechanisms. So that will depend on, of course, their age and how much damage has been done and how much needs to be repaired. Early on, I had a 91-year-old call me. He found us somehow, and he just had a case of pneumonia. I never want to have that again. He went on the internet and found us, and he's a strong, robust guy. He's doing very, very well. We have a lot of people. We've actually got a lot of school teachers, and once they go through the program, they'll drink a cup a day of the water to stay on it, because they're around kids a lot and a lot of bugs. So they don't get sick. A lot of our clients come and say, Anne, I haven't been sick since I've been in this program. Usually during the winter I'll get sick twice. That's not happening. It's hard for me to pick off the tip of my tongue all the good things I'm hearing from people, but we've had a few elderly, ladies also who are struggling with a lot of things, mind, cognition, energy, therefore they've lost their desire to do stuff. I can hear it in their voices. They're back in action. Some of them had pretty severe chronic pain, and we've advised them to do other things to help along with it. And even constipation. One woman, she'd taken so much medication throughout her life, this chronic constipation, and people are just flushing so much water through that it's just going through. You're not even antidiuretic hormone. It's just running through. You're not even absorbing this water in your colon. And actually, she was surprised as she increased her fat intake and cut down on her water. No more constipation after. She told me lifelong, 70 years of constipation. So as we tell people, we study deuterium and we teach it, but your body can utilize it in all sorts of ways to repair things. And obviously we can't make a guarantee, but we can guarantee your body has an innate intelligence that will, once it's enabled, will fix things. And the time frame depends, of course, on their age and their damage and how well they do the program.
And so are you familiar with, I know Dr. Sinclair's work on NAD and resveratrol and things
yes,
like that?
I have heard of him. I don't know him personally. I understand a lot of people using the NAD. It's a component of the Krebs cycle. And yes, we feel it's a deuterium depletion method. Dr. Boyce is going to be really good at explaining that to you if you talk to him. We do know that a lot of people are going in and getting it in the IV. Unfortunately, it's the water that's in the IV is not deuterium depleted. However, they can still get benefits from the NAD. A lot of that, though, down the road, I don't know if it's necessary, because as you kick in your motors, your Krebs cycle is going to work better. One of the things we do think about when you're putting a lot of things in your body now has to have the energy to process that and utilize it. And I've seen people, and even myself, I did it for a while back, they're just taking so many things. It does what's called metabolic crowding, where there's so much in there. And I try to explain, if you want to get home on a night out and you call a taxi, but 20 taxis come, you can't even get out of that crowd to get home. And that can be happening when you're putting a lot of these things in there that your body naturally can make itself. So it's up to, every individual case. I mean, some people are benefiting from these things, so go ahead. But, I start with deuterium depletion. That's what we do, and they can incorporate other things. That's their choice, and we just educate them about what we're doing, and they'll make those decisions from there. The resveratrol, we love resveratrol. There's lots of good studies about resveratrol. The French paradox, I think we can explain it now. Yes, resveratrol, and they're famous for the red wine, but you have to drink a lot of wine to get the resveratrol. I think, and we think, it's more, they've got the French products, but they don't age and they all look beautiful. All of their meals are creamy, fatty sources. They're really consuming a lot more fat than what we are. Therefore, they're lowering their deuterium levels. Therefore, they can utilize their resveratrol better. I'm not opposed to it. I try to, there's herbs, and it's a Japanese knotweed is high in the resveratrol. So I would personally go the herbal route rather than the red wine route, which can't even handle so much anymore. I tell people they've taken away my Australian passport and won't let me back in the country again because I can't keep up with the drinking quota because, it's just not worth it for me. I just can't handle it. Once you clean yourself out, you just really feel the effects of alcohol in your brain. So I would rather take the herbs for my resveratrol.
What's your theory on, since you have a background in Chinese medicine, the whole concept of Jing, Qi, and Shen, and how certain Chinese herbs will actually increase Jing, which in theory is supposed to extend lifespan, and it's been around for thousands of years and supposedly it has been beneficial. So how does that fit into this, and how is it possible they're extending their lifespan using these herbs? And there are some anecdotal, pretty unusual stories of people in China having lived for 100, 200 years. Whether or not they're true, I don't know. But is there any relationship there, do you think?
We study the Chinese herbs. We understand Jing and Shen. And actually, I took my courses this weekend on the Shen and the emotions regarding acupuncture and herbs. And it's known that you can increase Jing and energy and Qi and all of these things. I don't know. I think it probably worked better in maybe 100 years ago, better than it does now, because we have so many other things going on that I think it takes a longer process, more herbs, which can be tough on a lot of people to do this much. I do think that acupuncture and Deuterium depletion are the best anti-aging methods to do. You're increasing your cellular energy and moving around. And if some herbs can come in, like Gotu kola is very good for collagen production. There's mushrooms that are very good to help against radiation. Herbs can be used in numerous ways. So I'm not against that. I just do wonder if this day and age we need to just really focus more on the natural thing. Well, they're natural, but the things that we can do, such as the air and the sunshine and the food, and see if that works first before you add a lot more things in there. But that's on a case-by-case basis also. But I have noticed even in my own acupuncture school, we're all just wondering because many of them have had cancer in the last 3 or 4 years. It's just... I just met with the dean of my school to talk to him. We need to, and we will go and speak to the doctoral program there and educate them about deuterium. We've got a lot of great knowledge. This is what I will go to first. This is what I feel really sure about and really comfortable with. But if you have a Chinese doctor or an acupuncturist or herbal medicine doctor, I often tell our patients, go do that as well, especially for sleep and anxiousness, moving that qi, moving that energy around, building up someone's reserves can only, go hand in hand with light therapy, deuterium depletion food, breathing therapy. They're all good components for a longer, healthier, more quality life. Yes, we hear about these people living a long time, and I think it's very, very doable. And I think people who even have been unwell can still get better, improve, and can still live a longer life than they would have, or even feel better as they're older than what they did when they were in their 50s.
You mentioned earlier that more muscle means more mitochondria. So is it in theory, if you are a bodybuilder, would you necessarily live longer if you had lower deuterium? Is more muscle better?
Better. I mean, that's why we want to make sure that, a lot of women after menopause, they lose their muscle mass and their bone mass, and we have to keep them moving because they can become very frail and they don't have muscle. The more mitochondria you have, the more nanometers you have, the more cellular energy you can produce. So, we all need to focus on muscle. So bodybuilders have a few things, yes. The deuterium depletion is good because we have quite a lot of athletes, actually, Ethan, who are doing well, winning gold medals where they weren't winning them before. We have athletes who were actually run down, young, pushed, worked way too hard over the top, drinking Red Bull, all of these things, and have been on multi-million-dollar contract, being retired because they became ill from overdoing it and drinking the wrong things. And this one particular person had a very good medical doctor who monitored him and tracked him and measured everything. We got him under deuterium depletion prior. His goal was to just be a dad again. He got back on the team. So we've seen some pretty remarkable things. For bodybuilding, yeah, they will build more muscle, but also for all of the athletes, once they lower their deuterium, you have less inflammation when there's lower deuterium. So they don't build up the lactic acid. If they do pull or have an injury, they will heal from it faster. They will have more energy the next day, so they can go out and train harder and faster and not have this recovery time. So that's what's really helping a lot of the athletes. Yeah, so, somebody asked me the other day, do they need more deuterium to grow muscle? But if you've got cellular energy and the appropriate foods and eating the right amount of proteins, your body, you will make that muscle. You don't need to give yourself deuterium to build muscle.
And how does deuterium have any effect on your body retaining fat?
Usually the other way around, because what I measured myself with, I was doing it to measure my energy, but I was measuring my resting metabolic rate. But this is used actually in a lot of weight loss clinics and a lot of the surgery clinics for the bariatric surgeries. They want to make sure that their patients are going to be able to comply with a certain diet rather than doing the surgery and having them, not benefit from that or go back to their old lifestyle. So it's a very good device, and it's the only device where you can measure how many calories you need to maintain, lose, or gain weight. And some people, when they do calls, particularly for weight issues, always make sure I just talk with them about that, because as you regain energy, you start to feel better and your appetite can increase. So I just let them know, if your appetite increases, just don't give into it. You're living in a way for your health here, not for your, your taste buds and your desire so much. And if they're aware of it, they can think about it and manage it. But also fat actually satiates you. So the more fat that you eat, the less, you need to eat, because you feel fuller. If you eat carbs for breakfast and 10 minutes later you want more food, right? But fats don't do that to you. So many people do have good weight loss with this, and combined with the ketogenic diet by itself is famous for weight loss with it. Even early on with us, we had quite a few cancer patients hear about it, but then some of my own patients who had trouble. They had triple bypass, their doctors lose weight, lose and gain. They had Dr. Q's ketogenic meals at the time, and they lost the weight. Wives were telling me they're down to their washboard stomach that they haven't seen since high school, and sharing it with all of their friends for weight loss only. And I saw one of them recently after about 5 years, and he has maintained his weight, which was nice to see. Right? So yes, the ketogenic diet is beneficial for weight loss. It's good to make sure you're doing a deuterium depleted ketogenic diet, so you're not adding in the deuterium, because deuterium makes things grow. You will accumulate more fat. You'll have a sluggish metabolism. What we are working with mitochondrial dysfunction, and we call it restoring metabolic function. Right? Our tagline is energy for a better you. So by increasing your metabolism, making sure that your mitochondria are functioning properly, you'll have energy for a better you. So for weight, we do observe and make sure we watch people who are low in weight with the ketogenic diet. It's a matter of calories, because you can lose weight on the ketogenic diet, so we just have to follow them along the way and guide them along the way and make sure that they're consuming enough calories to maintain their weight.
What are the main factors then that separate the ketogenic diet from the deuterium depletion?
It's really the source
diet
of the food and the source of the fats. Because in the beginning they were making it from, fat sources from animals that have been fed high deuterium foods. Even, be careful when people buy, eggs now, they'll say vegetarian fed. It seems like a good thing, but that means that chicken was fed corn and soy, which are very high in deuterium. So we always want to look for animals that are pasture raised and pasture finished. The finished part is important because sometimes they're pasture raised and lamb, and then they'll fatten them up at the end for sale, and they'll feed them high deuterium foods. So we just help people to make the differentiation between high deuterium fats and low deuterium fats, and the source of the food is what's the big game changer here.
Now, in Dr. Campbell, the one I mentioned earlier, who wrote the book, the China Study, what he found was that, at least from his research, that casein was a big factor in people getting degenerative disease and not living as long. So obviously that's present in dairy and things of that nature. So do you think that it is really that, or it's actually the deuterium that's in the dairy that some of these
It's
cows are
probably a little bit of
consuming?
both, but yeah, people do have, reactions to casein. It creates inflammation. Gluten is a big one for, known to be contributing to inflammation. We do know that there's a lot of the glyphosate on the gluten, so that's probably a big component overall. Also, maybe more than the actual gluten component. Dr. Boris has explained it to me, and that actually our gut bacteria is their mitochondria rotates in the opposite direction, so it's actually utilizing deuterium. They're actually a deuterium depletion method, and that it's more about exchange of ions inside the the epithelial layers of the gut lining. And if you have good cellular level energy levels, you'll be able to. It's a fast turnover in the gut lining, so you'll be able to heal those tight junctions, and that everybody's concerned about proteins passing through into the bloodstream, causing either allergies or these food sensitivities. And I was testing people for food sensitivities and for, gut bugs, etc. And I just wait now. I wait to see how the deuterium depletion affects them. Some people are able to add some cheese and dairy into their diet slowly, and sometimes we'll give them some enzymes to help them assimilate that. Everybody also has their own time frame there on how sensitive they were. There's degrees of it. They'll measure you 1, 2, 3, or 4 plus, and how your immune system is responding. I think some people just need to cut it out if it's affecting them, and listen to their bodies. And then if they can incorporate it, that's great. We focus on the deuterium and, allowing the low levels of deuterium to heal the gut and to modulate your immune system and see what happens from there.
And in all the patients that you've worked with over the years, are there any that you, with given a reasonable amount of time, were unable to treat or solve their conditions, whatever they might have been?
We've had, and some of those are Lyme's patients who we have explained to, we're going to manage your deuterium levels, but you will still need to have your doctors manage your Lyme's. They have been difficult. I've seen some people respond, and I've seen some people have struggles with that. And we have had quite a few people, and I understand this, especially for cancer patients, Ethan, they've been through everything, they've tried everything, and we can be kind of a last ditch thing sometimes. And we've tested people at the last, and then they've passed away 1 or 2 days later and they show they're very above the 150 range. And we have had people above the 150 range that we just say, just suggest them, just go to your GP, go to your doctor, just get your blood work done and get checked out. We can't diagnose any condition, but there seems to be a correlation between high deuterium levels and disease processes. So yes, we have known people that we've started with that have not done well, but and we've had, as I said, some people in the beginning when I wasn't as good as explaining it as well, due to lack of experience, that you may not notice it, straight away. And we are in the culture where people are accustomed to taking a pill and expecting fast results. So I'm always spending time discussing that with people so that they can have realistic expectations. But I did have one woman who did get upset with me because she didn't notice anything in 2 months. And, that was a mistake for me, or I didn't know well enough to explain that. So that's why I'm always sure to explain to people that you will have your own time frame. Trust your body. Trust that your body will make the priority and it will go to work to fix things given enough time. And it can be a time process for some people. Some people respond fast. Our cancer patients, Dr. Q has them, on it 6 months after they're in remission. Everybody varies, and that's why we're talking to them along the way. And they can either, once they've got to the point where they're feeling good, they can go off the water, get tested once a year. They can just drink a cup a day. Or like myself and a lot of people, we just go on the least depleted water. So it's kind of like our health insurance, right? We just make sure we maintain our levels. And check them periodically and, do the other lifestyle along the way. Did I go off track with your question there? Your question was about, if people are really, really ill, there's a time frame in healing, of course.
I mean, and obviously 2 days is not reasonable to turn someone around. But if someone, let's say someone had cancer and you were able to treat them for 6 months. My question is, have you been unsuccessful in treating that condition and reversing it? given enough time.
Yeah, and 6 months is often not enough time for cancer patients also. So we have had patients start it and then 4 months into it, 6 months into it. Some of them have had so much metastasis to the bones that, you know, they will die of cancer or they will die of something else. But in the meantime, we're giving them quality of life. We're giving them oftentimes a longer life. We had a letter just recently, thank you for giving my daughter more time with me. So, yeah, you know, it depends on the damage of the patient and how they're going to respond. There's definitely no guarantees here. We just really are letting them know that this is something you can do to take away fuel for tumours, help your body be stronger and hopefully, you know, build itself back.
But if you were able to, let's say you were in reasonably good health now and start to manage your deuterium levels, theoretically, would you ever get cancer?
It would be very difficult. I think we're kind of bulletproof. Dr. Boas himself, you know, he's the ninth physician in his generation, and this is where, you know, his family become doctors for mankind. And he had a twin brother, both doctors, and his twin brother did get a tumor, and he actually did die from the cancer. And Dr. Boas, as his twin, ended up having a similar situation, esophageal metaplasia, and he is fine. All he's done is Deuterium depletion. He does his push-ups to maintain his muscle mass. He eats fat, doesn't even drink that much water, and his brother died in 2006, I think. So he's managed it. I think that I'm not concerned about it. I think my body doesn't have the fuel to grow tumours, sustain tumours. That's me personally. I don't want to say, you know, you can really avoid, I think you can really avoid going down that road if you keep your deuterium levels in check.
One thing that I was a little surprised about was that honey is high in deuterium, and why is that? Oh, because it's sweet. But stevia is sweet also, right?
It is. Stevia comes from the plant. It's a green plant. That's where they get the stevia from. So, yeah, the bees make the honey. So there again, it's not forever. And as people lower their deuterium levels, if they want to use a little bit of honey, you know, periodically, we just don't want people daily putting a lot of deuterium back in their diet. So that's where people can make those sensible decisions based upon, you know, the knowledge that they have about which foods are high in deuterium, which foods are low.
Well, tell me more about your center and how people can get involved and find out about you, and if they are interested in signing up for your program.
Yes, thank you. Our website is ddcenters.com, double D centers plural.com. We do have an 800 number, 800-208-0280. We actually offer for people who are interested a 10-minute call where they can just learn a little bit more. I mean, obviously after listening to this, they're going to learn a lot about deuterium, and we have had people listening to some of our programs for more than 7 hours. The general public is really interested, and they're willing to listen to the 7 hours more than once. So I'm really happy that people are, you know, taking this in, and they're willing to make the phone call and learn more. And from there, if they decide to, they just, you know, get an intake, do an intake with us, and we get to know about them, and we write a protocol for them and go over and educate them about all the modules that they will learn, send them videos that they can learn different techniques, and follow them along the way, and answer any questions that they have. And also, we just like to get as much feedback as we can from them, so we can learn, both can learn from each other, share as much information on how people are responding. And our website does have, you know, a lot of studies on there. But that's why this is nice today. I really appreciate you allowing me to just kind of say what I've seen, because that's really what people like to hear. It's, you know, they've heard a lot of things, but it's really, they like to hear from somebody else how it's actually working personally.
You know, one last question I totally forgot to ask was, so your deuterium depleted water is made in, I forget what country, but in some other country. Now, I've seen some YouTube videos about people talking about how to make it at home, freezing the water and scooping off the frozen part of the water. And so does that actually work, or and how is this water produced that makes it different?
That's a good question. Yeah, our physicist in Hungary, I think 30 years ago, he's built this very large plant that actually is not an easy process. They pull the deuterium atoms out of the water. And it's very smart. People are trying, good for them. They're trying to find ways to do it for their health. In fact, for me, when I was very low in energy after pushing myself for too long, I did get a hold of some of the water and I bounced back. And then I ran out because we hadn't really got it going yet. And I immediately went back to the way I was. So I was like, oh, I don't want to feel like this again. Let's make the water. However, it just is, it's not going to be depleted enough to have any physiological advantage. You're going to, just get this much difference in their ppm. So I don't think it's worth it. I think it's, you're better off eating fat. You'll make more of your own deuterium depleted metabolic water by eating fat than trying to make your own deuterium depleted water.
And so what's the target? Is everybody different as far as the target deuterium level that we're trying to achieve in our bodies to extend life to optimally?
130 ppm or below. We've had some athletes go much lower, but if we can get people down to 130 ppm, they're not bogged down by deuterium, they can start to have cellular energy again, and the process will go in a positive direction in the other way. So yeah, so people, luckily, they do get into that range rather quickly with the water, and then we'll teach them how to maintain it, and they can check it along the way.
And suppose you do go lower, is there any advantage to going lower, or is it all?
Some of the athletes, they're high performance people. These guys, they want high performance everything. And yeah, there is. I mean, probably you can get below 120 and, you'll function even better. But, given 130, you're going to have a good physiological range and receive benefits from that. Also, just, even like, maybe I didn't know this enough, just, deuterium accumulates in our tissues also, and even our cholesterol. People always want to get their cholesterol levels checked before anything else. That's what they want to know. And I feel that it should be deuterium now that we know about this, because the bonds between cholesterol and hydrogen, the bonds between deuterium and hydrogen is 7 times stronger than the bonds between regular hydrogens. And cholesterol is one of our important nutrients. The sun is supposed to come and break those bonds down into pregnenolone, and then we make it into our steroid hormones, which is our sex hormones, our vitamin D, and bile salts to help us utilize fats. And if they can't break down those bonds, that can really diminish how much we can make those steroid hormones. And also, I don't know yet, we'll be researching, but I just wonder, is that why we're hoarding cholesterol? Because what we have is unusable. As we go through this, we'll see and study and learn more. I mean, I've had people have told me that they just can't believe how their cholesterol dropped so much when all they did was eat fat. So, we're relearning that fat is not so much the contributor and that cholesterol is not such an evil thing. But also understand that as far as autoimmunity goes, the three-dimensional structure of deuterium is different from our thyroid cells. So if it starts to accumulate in our joints, in our other tissues, that can trigger an immune response and often an autoimmune response. So by lowering that deuterium, we can dampen down that immune response so they're not responding so harshly. And I've just found also that what we were doing before was really trying to help people's thyroid and help their adrenal glands and to help their metabolism. But now that I've learned about this, I've realized that those glands are overworking and getting really fatigued because they're compensating for low cellular energy. So just by going back and regaining that cellular energy, you're not having to push yourself so hard, and they can have some time to recover. And you're not having to push all of these other things, caffeine, into your body to get going. Somebody did ask me early on, a nurse asked me, she said, Anne, didn't you feel anxiety once you got all that more energy? And I had actually didn't need caffeine because I was always very high energy. I never drank caffeine. But I had to think about it. I said, no, I don't. I just feel like I did 15 years ago. At the times where you often wish, I wish I was back there again, So I didn't get hyped up. I can be hyped up. That's just my personality. But no, I just felt like I wasn't so worn out, more rested by managing my deuterium levels. And I've had quite a few patients just recently, actually. Now I've got a few new babies on the planet because one in particular, I'll tell you, she'd been trying to get pregnant 6 to 8 years. She did have an autoimmune condition, Hashimoto's, against her thyroid. And so we measured her deuterium levels. In pregnant mums, we obviously don't want to go too far below 130 because the baby needs the deuterium to grow. But often pregnant women do feel better when they're pregnant because the baby is taking the deuterium away from them for their growth, and the mum's immune system is not going bonkers so much. So now we can understand why a lot of these women feel better when they're pregnant. But in this particular case also, afterwards, a beautiful, gorgeous baby, but her also, just no problems, plenty of energy afterwards, no postpartum depression. She's had a very, very good experience. I always did, with my patients, a fertility program in acupuncture, but even before acupuncture, I did a nutritional 3-month fertility program for both the mum and the dad. I tell mums, hey, you spent a year preparing for your wedding. Let's spend some time preparing your body for a baby. So we always wanted to encourage as much healthy egg and sperm as possible. Now I do deuterium depletion first, make sure there's a lot of cellular energy in there, and really prepare the parents to create, a healthy fetus in the first place, and healthy parents with plenty of energy. Particularly now, a lot of parents are becoming parents later in life. We want to get their energy back and make sure they've got really healthy, act as though it's younger, ingredients, egg and sperm, and then they've got the energy to take care of a 2-year-old running around.
Yeah, do you think in any way having lower deuterium would extend, for example, the childbearing years of a woman and not have menopause or menopausal symptoms later in life?
Well, we have a certain amount of eggs, right? So a lot of that is dependent upon our mum as far as, we kind of follow when menopause starts as our mums did. We pass that on. We pass the mitochondria on maternally from our mother. Menopause can be very much controlled, and the aftermath of menopause. And when I was talking about the hormones before, we actually make our sex hormones and our steroid hormones from the same raw ingredients. And I try to explain to younger women who have no clue that what's even a female doctor for, because they feel great, that you actually make your cortisol and your stress hormones that you're using, keeping going and having this great job and enjoying life and running around with, you use them as your ovaries shut down. Your adrenal glands should be taking over and making still the sex hormones. But if you've run over that supply and making stress hormones, when that time comes, your body, so a lot of women can really fall flat into menopause very quickly because they have such a harsh drop in hormones. So, just teaching them the lifestyle along the way, which includes better sleep, better thoughts, better lifestyle, managing yourself, pacing yourself, which frankly I didn't know how to do, and I really like to share this so people don't have to go through how I had a pretty rough time at the time because I had not listened, paid attention to all my patients, and it's kind of common amongst a lot of practitioners to just be outward focusing, getting a lot from that, but not stopping and slowing down yourself and getting the right amount of sleep. So I like to share it. I like people to realize that you can go through this much better with a slower aging process, feel better, not have all the bone loss and also all the brain fog and all of the things that can come along with menopause. As is, they see in Asia, right? They do eat differently. They do eat more phytochemicals. I'm not into eating soy, but that's what they eat in their area. So I think that women in America are suffering quite a bit from menopause, probably needlessly, and it could be it could be changed for the better.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you and learning about this subject a bit more in depth, and look forward to maybe catching up later again another time.
Thanks, Ethan. I really appreciate it. You had a lot of really good questions, and I hope I was able to answer them all really well and concise for you. But we'll be talking again. If anything else comes up, we'll make sure you can be aware of it and share it, because I know you will. So I really appreciate this. I just want to thank my mentors who have been able to allow me to learn this, Dr. Boris and Dr. Q, and also all the people that have been working with this, effort, with a lot of effort to really, and taking a lot of pride in making this available for the world. Thank you for contributing also.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Wake and Empower TV with my special guest, Dr. Ann Cooper. Join me next week as we speak with another incredible individual who's standing on leading edge and changing the world.